Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Turf War, the show where 64 teams go head-to-head to see who is the ultimate fantasy football champion. We're gathered for another live show tonight. Got an awesome one, and we're getting better as I formally introduce my co-host, Lauren. Lauren, good afternoon, good evening, good evening. It's 8 o'clock. Good evening.
Our co-host, Lauren Hill. And I'm so excited for tonight's episode because we're introducing somebody new. Yay!
Yeah, so get that Band-Aid ripped off because he's waiting in the curtains, and I think he's sweating profusely. Can't tell, but we're going to assume it. So we have an exciting announcement right off the bat, is we have found an amazing co-host to join us because no one likes to hear me ramble on and on and on and on and on. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our new co-host. You may remember him from such interviews at This Morning as Matthew Ane. Matthew, good evening, sir. Welcome to Fantasy Turf War, our new co-host.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, now we're going to take the camera right off of you so it's not staring at you like that. We'll be nice and we'll play nice. All right, so Matt, we had your interview this afternoon about 2 o'clock-ish, so people may have had a chance to get to know you a little bit, but tell us where you're coming from and a little bit about what you do over at Locked On, and tell us a little bit about your story for the people who haven't seen the interview yet.
So I do a fantasy baseball podcast over at Locked On Fantasy Baseball with my best friend Dom Martino. We hit it about 5 days a week for 30 minutes, and we just give you the best baseball coverage you can get in that short amount of time, get you in, get you out, and I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Awesome, and we're glad to have you. I knew we had put the feelers out there that we were looking for an extra co-host because, like I said, I've got a face made for radio. And, we had already done our interview, and I was looking for someone who knows what they're talking about. And when it comes to the nitty-gritty, as we'll see a little bit later, and had some good chemistry, was just a genuinely good guy. And you came to mind, and I'm so glad you reached out, and I'm glad we have you on board. So welcome to your first live show with us. Yay! The crowd goes wild. All right. So before we get into today's topic, I wanted to toss it over to Lauren to give our first live read today. So go take away, Lauren.
Yes. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at FullTime Fantasy. I'm going to be looking right here because I am awful at memorizing things. So we're going to be reading this. We wanted to give a shout out to our friends over at FullTime Fantasy and the Fantasy Football World Champions. Dive into a world where fantasy football skills meet unparalleled rewards. Whether you're a rookie or a seasoned pro, Full-Time's Tourneys, are tailored to challenge, excite, and reward with league-specific prizes and grand rewards that match your expertise. There's a throne for every champion. Draft from the comfort of your own home or draft at Circa's Stadium Slim in Vegas, which is very exciting. Just amazing drafting location on the planet. I don't just say you're good at fantasy football, prove it. Head on over to fantasyturfwar.com/contests and sign up today. Signing up greatly helps out our channel and helps us do what we do, and your support is greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Lauren. And before we start talking about content, I wanted to take a moment to self-plug, if you will, because the people who do Full-Time Fantasy are one of the teams in our league, and they have acquired a magazine called Pro Forecast Fantasy Football, and I'll go ahead and pull this up now. I don't know if Lauren knows this. Matt just saw it. So they just dropped an issue this morning with the 35th anniversary issue on the shelves in Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, and it is a good document. I've usually grab several fantasy football magazines for the rankings and some sleeper picks because you never know who's going to call what. Although I'm going to defer to Matt, maybe he's got the better guys this year. But if you'll notice, a little self plug here on the bottom right, you'll see that my profile was actually featured in the Must Follows on X page. So go ahead and pick up this magazine. Again, it's good for your drafts to have when you're sitting there on your draft. It's awesome content. The cheat sheets are amazing. Again, they have really good sleeper picks as well, and you'll actually see one of our own in Fantasy Turf War mentioned in the magazine. So little self plug there, but we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming.
All right. So we're just gonna get right into it. As we dive into some of the off-season news surrounding the league, and today Matt is going to be talking about the NFC South for us. So let's just get right into it.
All right. So I guess let's just start at the top with the best team in the division, in my opinion, with the San Francisco 49ers. They consist of obviously the best running back in the league, and with the fantasy football, everybody knows that Christian McCaffrey is going to be the number one pick overall in every league. He was the number one fantasy football performer last year. He had 357 points last year, which is absolutely amazing. He's an absolute cheat code in every format, whether it's PPR, standard, or half point. He has 272 attempts last year, 1,459 rushing yards. He had 14 touchdowns, 83 targets, 67 receptions, and had 564 reception yards along with 7 touchdowns. The dude is an absolute cheat code when it comes to that. I'm all about him this year, picking him 101. Let's keep it going. Cory, what do you feel about him? Do you picking him over 101 or?
Yeah, so I'll pause for just a half a second and say that I'm still learning, and I'm a little obsessed with my Stream Deck, so I accidentally hit a button, and so you saw a crazy overlay. So that won't happen again, because I'm not going to touch this thing anymore. But I will say that, yes, I totally agree. Christian McCaffrey, being in North Carolina, I'm a little bit biased in that I was at the game where he put up 4 touchdowns, and I don't even know how many yards, ungodly yards against the Jaguars. And so he, in my book, is a fantasy god, one of those for the books. I have a couple of autographs of his, so I'm a big fan. Even though, as a Raiders fan, I should not be supporting him on the 49ers, I still do. I don't know. Is there an argument for anyone else to even be in the conversation as a number one pick in really any format? Or is it just all formats, he's got it?
He's essentially got it. I mean, some people argue that, like, with the turmoil of just how quick running backs essentially get injured and such, that, you may want to go with, a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, any of those great wide receivers that could be a wide receiver one and finishes the number one overall fantasy contributor this season as well. But ultimately, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, and running backs, in my opinion, I'm pretty much more like a running back kind of obsessor. I don't leave without running back in the first round. With their guaranteed production of that many attempts of 357 last year, that's guaranteed production that wide receivers aren't. They have to get open, they have to get the ball thrown, they have to, get enough distance and have a good amount of, yards per reception in order for them to really succeed here. So whereas Christian McCaffrey, guaranteed, and to be a good running back, you need 4.5 yards per carry. Yep. Yeah, that is, with that kind of guaranteed production, why not draft a running back, in my opinion, and Christian McCaffrey's that guy.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to say no, right? Because it's not a running back by committee scenario, so you don't have to worry about him splitting time unless there's an injury involved, which he is a little bit prone to, but not too much recently. So he's good for production there. There's a good floor and an unheard of kind of ceiling if you just went for it sometimes. So you never know. Lauren, what's your take on Christian McCaffrey? Are you a Christian McCaffrey supporter, or do you have a different number one pick in mind?
I have never had the number one pick, so I've never been blessed with well, that's a lie. I had it last year and I chose Justin Jefferson.
Okay.
But when he was talking about, yeah, I know, I figured that face was gonna happen. My take on it is that, yes, I think if you have the first pick in the draft, you should be choosing a running back, just because running backs are more likely to put up more points just in general than a wide receiver, unless you have like the best wide receiver ever and he's just going after game 30-40 points. But there are less running backs that are good, in my opinion. So like, you have the chance to draft Christian McCaffrey, I would do it too.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so while we're on the topic of San Francisco, you've got a tight end that used to be pretty much a staple in George Kittle. I know I don't know why this topic keeps coming up today, but Taylor Swift. So there's some other competition in the tight end position, not on the 49ers, but I still look at him as a staple in most. If I have to pick a tight end, I don't see a problem picking up Kittle. But Matt, what do you think about that?
So when it comes to Kittle, like obviously he has more of like injury concerns. He played 15 games the year before, 16 games last year, and the year before that I think it was even less. Kittle can get hurt. He's honestly kind of made of plexiglass in my opinion, but at the same time he still finishes pretty high because when he's on the field he is super productive. He finished as the tight end 3 in 2022 and the tight end 5 last year. So I can't hate on him too much. The guy does get the job done. And the only other thing that I kind of have against him is the fact that he's just in a crowded reception room. You have, 2 great wide receivers sitting behind him. And honestly, that cheat code of Christian McCaffrey as well, who, gets that many receptions. When it comes to the Kittle, I kind of like, he's the last of kind of the Mohegans when it comes to like top 5, top 6 kind of tight ends. But at the same time, when I leave with him, it's because I kind of am stuck and I want a top end talent. Usually it's kind of on the bubble. If I choose not to just pick a high end tight end, I'm going for the tanks, and I'm kind of just gonna stream that position every week because it's a onesie position unless you're playing in Scotty Fishbowl. So, ultimately it's an easy position where I could play matchup, draft 2, or just pick one off the waiver wire and drop it left and right. So like, it's not a position I genuinely value, period, for fantasy football.
Yeah, interesting point. So I think there's a line when it comes to tight ends, right? It's like you get those top tiers, or it's kind of like the everyone else. So for Lauren, for you, does Kittle cross that threshold of I'm going to draft him in a decent position, or I'm just going to pick him up as I need him, in kind of like the all other category?
If I'm being honest, thinking about like all the different years I've played fantasy football, I agree with Matt in the sense that I've typically drafted somebody not so early, and then I'm stuck with like, well, I don't like him. Like, I'm like, he doesn't really do anything. Or he'll give me like 1.4 points. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. But I agree. Like, the tight end position for me is you easily drop. I've never, like, obviously if you end up with like Travis Kelce, you're probably going to be golden unless you get one of his bad games. But
depends on if she's in attendance, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which they have amended the schedule, as we alluded to in Matt's interview. Like, that's the benchmark, right? Is if the NFL has adjusted our schedule to meet our needs because of our concert series, then that's how you make it. But hopefully that's not an indicator of his games. But sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, hopefully not.
So, okay, yeah, and I think for me, when I draft, it's been hard for me to justify picking up a tight end any kind of early ever since Gronk has been done, because the production isn't necessarily to a point where I'm like, I've got to have it, and there's usually something else on the table by then, so I usually just kind of default to the all others. But yeah, maybe Kelce kind of crosses that threshold, but I usually just kind of wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people, like family members, draft Kelce first round, but my family, as we learn, my family league is a little unserious. So.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they're not far off though. Like last year, Kelce was like, based off of ADP, 11, 12, 13, depending on league format. Like Kelce was a smash pick pretty much the last 3 years in the first round, and you're walking away with pretty much like a cheat code at that too, because I could still go out and draft 2 wide receivers and have a low end wide receiver 1 and a high end wide receiver 2 after drafting Kelce. You just go 0 RB, and then boom, I pretty much have 4 solid wide receivers, because Kelce is really just a wide receiver that is the size of a tight end in playing tight end with the tight end designation. So he's kind of a cheat code, but I think he's on a downward turn. But we'll get into him when we talk about tight ends.
Sounds good. All right, who's up next on the list? So we've got Brock Purdy. I think he's got an interesting story, right? Because he went from I don't want to say worst to first. That's the wrong way to put it. But he was the last pick in the draft last year and found himself in the Super Bowl, which is unheard of. So, is that fantasy relevant, Matt, or is it just a great story on a professional level for him?
So I look at Brock Purdy like this. I hate to use this quote twice, but he is the last of Mohegans when it comes to top 12 kind of quarterbacks, because he does produce at a rate where he's getting in the top 12 and finishing it with a top 12 finish about 48% of the time, nearly 50%. And the only why I say he's more of like a top 12 and not like a top 5 or 6 is because he only finishes as a top 1 to 6 quarterback about 24% of the time. He's pretty much like, if he was in any other team, he'd be not as good. He's a system guy, and over at San Francisco, it fits him perfectly. Plus, he's got like a mega amount of weapons around him. Honestly, I could probably step into that system and be a quarter as good. I mean, I've never played, quarterback in my life. I've just been a fantasy football quarterback. But, it's just one of those things where like it's so built up for this kid that, it's nearly dummy proof. And Brock Purdy's going to be great for fantasy, but not be like elite where like we're going to see him take a step forward. He is who he is. He's going to be reliable, and if you pick him as the last top 12 quarterback, you're going to be happy.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and I don't think he's putting up the Peyton Manning 49-point games, which I lost with Peyton Manning in that spot during that game. So this doesn't mean everything, but I agree with that. Lauren, what do you think?
I don't know a whole lot about Brock Purdy. Obviously, I've seen what the media knows about him, and obviously the story of him literally coming from nothing to going to the Super Bowl, like you said. But I kind of agree in the sense that he reminds me a little bit of like Nick Foles in the Eagles, where it was like he obviously wasn't slated to be like that top spot, but it just happened, and then there you go, Super Bowl. He just didn't end up winning the Super Bowl, but.
Yeah, so not necessarily flashy, but consistent enough to where you're paying attention. So I think that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Who's next?
I mean, let's talk about probably the most controversial player, because he might not even be on this team by the time we finish this podcast. Who knows? And that's Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk. There's so many rumors of is he going to stay? Is TikTok going to create this viralness about him? But like ultimately, there's a chance he might end up in Washington, but he says he wants to stay. I'm very confused. I feel like I'm talking to my future teenage daughter when it comes to him trying to make a decision here. But, I like Brandon Ayuk. If he stays in the system, I'm confident he's going to finish as a top 20 wide receiver. He's actually crazy enough, which is bonkers to me. He's finished as the 15th and 14th wide receiver for both 22 and 23. He stepped it up and was extra efficient this year. His, yards per reception was much higher. Was about 5 yards per reception higher, which equated to obviously the better fantasy performance. But I think that might come down because that's hella efficient, and I don't think those deep balls are going to be there for him as much. And if we can get Debo to stay on the field as much as humanly possible, I think that things are just going to be a little bit more kind of like swayed, and we could just say, hey, he's going to be good. He's going to be a top 20, but I don't think he's going to live up to his draft price right now. His ADP, if I'm not mistaken, is 21st overall, which is, essentially like a wide receiver 14, 15, and you're pretty much drafting him at his floor / I think ceiling, unless one of either Debo or him leave, or Kittle. And then we could kind of open up that floor for him to kind of take that step forward. I think he's just is who he is.
Yeah, fair point. What if you had a percentage odds? Do you think he's going to stay, or do you think he's going to leave?
Oof. I think it's about...
You can't say 50-50.
No, I think it's about 70-30 he stays, just because, somebody's going to have to pay a high price in order to acquire him, for starters. And, nobody's going to want to pay that price tag. 2, they could still franchise tag him and still have him around whether he's happy about it or not. So Ayuk is just going to be there, I think, until they're pretty much saying, you're not performing anymore and see you later, and kind of do like what they did with like Juju, what they're doing with T. Higgins now, and just like, okay, cool, you're going to be trapped in San Francisco zone where you can't just take off and, moonshot to the next level.
Yeah, and there's worse problems to have, right? Because it's obviously a very productive system that you're still in San Francisco, and so if you have to stay, you're on a pretty good team. So there's an argument both ways, but I agree. I think the money's probably the problem. in that it's a very high price tag. You're gonna have to, he's gonna want to sell high, and I don't know if another team's willing to pick it up. And it'll be interesting to see, but I think he stays.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess since we've talked about Debo, we might as well talk about him, right? He's another guy that kind of like frustrates me. When he's healthy, he's incredible, but he has a higher risk, capability. Because I mean, even last year, even though he played more games than he did the year before, he played 15. There's going to be that season where he plays like 7 or 8 or a couple half games because he gets hurt quite often. But it's just how he plays. He's just a monster. Last year, he was able to put up 213 points, and have a boatload of wonderful yards of 892 through 60 receptions, and still had 7 touchdowns through the air. Like, the kid is incredible. Had 225 rushing yards through 37 attempts. Like, he just has a baked in, production, whereas other wide receivers don't have. So, I like him in those aspects, but again, I don't feel comfortable walking away with him. Like, if I went 2 running backs, back to back, which I tend to do a lot, I'm not trying to walk away with him as my wide receiver 1 in a 12-man league, or especially in the league that we're about to enter in on Turf War. I'm really trying to avoid him if I smash 2 running backs back to back. I do not want him as my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I agree. I usually go behind the curtain, I guess, strategy, but I usually go back, running back is my top 2 if I can help it, just because the depth is needed come the bye weeks. But I've been burned by Debo several times in that I get a chance to draft him and I don't, and I regret it because it comes to pay off later down the season, and it just, it's the darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of thing. So, it's a love-hate relationship with Debo, but killer name, I'll give him that. So, Lauren, what's your take on Debo, and do you do the running back, or kind of what's your top strategy there?
So, like I mentioned in my interview that we just wrapped up, I was raised in a house with an older brother and my dad, so I learned a lot of things from my brother. So a lot of that was like when I was in high school doing fantasy, I would just be like, who should I draft? I don't even know. I don't know what I'm doing. So a lot of years I've listened to him, and he tells me running back. He likes running back, wide receiver, which I mean, it's give or take. I feel like just with who you're picking and who you're choosing and what your options are and whatnot. But as I've grown, I've made my own choices, and I have learned that running back is a good choice. I've also done, I don't know, again, I have a league with my family, and it's so almost angering when someone will do something so out of pocket, like drafting a quarterback in the first round, and you're like, that's not how this is supposed to work. That's not what you're supposed to do. But yeah, I usually do running back if I get the opportunity to, or if there's it. Again, it just depends where I am in the draft order. But if I'm near the back half of the second round and I have the opportunity to draft a really good quarterback, then I'll probably do it. But it just depends on how I'm feeling the day. I don't want to reveal all this. People are gonna be like, "Oh, we know."
Yeah, there's a spoiler alert for your interview. We cover one of your top draft picks in that interview, so make sure they check it out. We won't drop the jokes just yet. We gotta wait for it to air. We gotta monetize on that, But but it's interesting. Fantasy football is especially drafts is just so situational, depending on what's going on in the league. Where are you at in terms of the scores and your win losses, and do you really need to win this week that you've got to make some drastic moves? But what I have noticed is, as my camera freezes, the draft is always interesting when it comes to family leagues. I've noticed in traditional leagues there's a standardization, if you will, to kind of how that goes, right? People have their process and how that goes, but in family leagues there's always one person who just bucks with a B, bucks it, and just picks the random quarterback in the first round or something like that, and they just throw strategy out the window. And in that case, it's hard to make that call if you're going to pick up Deebo Samuel in that second spot, or if you're going to ride the quarterback trend because someone decided to go for it. So it's always interesting to see. But Yeah. So, Lauren, on the San Francisco side, has anybody been picked up over the offseason that might be worth mentioning or bringing up, or anything relevant on the draft side?
For San Francisco, I thought we've already talked about. I mean, like, I feel like the biggest news is about Brandon. I'm not going to try to say his last name because I know I'm going to butcher it. But yeah, the whole TikTok and all of that, I feel like that's really what's going on right now on social media with the 49ers. Other than that, not too much.
All right. Matt, anything on the statistics side? I know they picked up a wide receiver in the first. Anything relevant fantasy-wise, or we just kind of wait and see?
He's kind of like going to be like a non-factor, if anything, maybe help. I forget the guy's name, but essentially he's going to be the guy that kind of takes away from these guys production-wise. Because, I mean, you can look at it and go, Ricky Purcell, that's his name. So, he's a slot receiver, so he's going to take away a lot of these dink and dunks things away from maybe take from CMC, but I doubt it because he just has a bunch of planned routes and things like that. But, maybe he hurts Ayuk, maybe he hurts Debo a little bit. We shall see. Maybe he's not even involved this year. He's kind of the replacement for either trade deadline, possibly Ayuk moving, or and next year kind of guy, get him in the room with two great receivers and then kind of help him work on his tools to then step into the role next year. Who knows? I mean, granted, when did they pick him?
The first. I think they picked him up in the first.
Yep, end of first. So, I mean, it is a high investment. There is draft capital behind it, so maybe he has that relevancy on the team. But at the same time, I think he's kind of more of a project for them than anything else.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. With the talks about you perhaps leaving, maybe he's more of an insurance policy, and then if not, then he's an investment in building him up for next year. So, good point. All right. So I'm a diehard Raiders fan, so I think we spent way too long on the Niners. So let's go ahead and transition over to another team in the NFC South in the pick one. You want to go Seattle or you want to go LA? Rock, paper, scissors, go. Just kidding.
All right. Seattle, let's do it.
All right, let's do Seattle. Let's go ahead.
All right. I guess we'll start off with a running back, same kind of format, right? We'll talk about Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker last year had finished as an RB19, 2022 RB16, and similar points, only about a 5-point difference, which actually gave him literally 3 different finishes. He had a good season, played about 15 games in both seasons, so does have a tendency at least miss a couple games. But I mean, if my running back's playing, 15 out of 17 weeks, that's fantasy season eligible. But if you're playing in week 18, I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, if he plays 15 weeks, I'm pretty happy. Hopefully it's earlier than later. He does get the rock pretty often. 219 carries last year, 228 the year before. 905 rushing yards, averaged about 4.1 yards per carry, had 8 rushing touchdowns. He got targeted a lot too, 37 targets with 29 receptions. Was able to get a rushing touchdown in that. If he can convert a little bit more, even get thrown the ball a little bit more, that'd be great. Obviously, there's limitations with having Geno Smith behind center there. Hopefully, next year they can kind of, be worse and then kind of pick a quarterback to, fulfill what they got going on there and hopefully get somebody better to throw to. Obviously, DK Metcalf, Lockett, and Jackson Smith Njigba, if I didn't butcher that name.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, 5 times fast maybe?
Yeah, okay. I'll get a lawsuit from just trying to butcher that. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm just kidding. Please don't. Because then I'm gonna have to. Yeah, because then I'm gonna have to do it, and I'm gonna butcher it, and then it's just gonna go downhill from there. So, all right. So let's take it from let's go from the draft. So from their perspective, they really didn't draft anything worthy of helping out their offense. So we can probably just bypass that guy. So do you think we're looking at anything out of DK Metcalf that's spectacular? Do you think there's anything noteworthy, or where do you think they start to fall in terms of fantasy draft positions?
So DK Metcalf is kind of like a guilty pleasure. Like, he is somebody that just can take over a game, and when it comes to that, that's kind of where I get really excited about, who do I want as my, wide receiver 1, 2, depending on how my team build is going. Like, if I could even get like a first round running back, go wide receiver, and DK's my 2, I'm pretty happy. You know, Metcalf has this thing where he's like kind of more of like a boom bust guy, where he'll have 46% of the time he'll finish as a top 24 wide receiver, and then finish as a number 1 receiver about 20% of the time. So there is that about like, you know, gosh, I'm doing math tonight, but 34% of the time where he's just not like a productive wide receiver, but he doesn't completely mutilate you. He'll get like 7 to 8 to 9 points, which isn't atrocious. It's really more on Geno and being him being poor than his actual talent. So in a lot of leagues, you'll see me trying to target him as well, trying to get, you know, DK on my team and say, hey, I'm going to go for the upside, and hopefully I have a consistent wide receiver 1 that I can lean on. And then when he does have those blow up games, those 2 are pretty much going to win me a week.
Okay, fair enough.
So, I mean, I don't know. Have you guys, are you a fan? What's the deal? Like, you know.
Again, as a Raiders fan, I kind of avoid the Seahawks, but my wife finds the jerseys pretty cool, so, you know, they got that going for him. You know, personally, I hesitated last year with the new quarterback in Geno, and kind of seeing how that's all going to play out before I really invested too much energy into him. Like I try and go for a little more of a surefire bet when I'm picking up people, especially on waiver wires, unless I get really desperate. So it's hard to say. I agree with Metcalf. He's kind of the boomer bust. You could get some really good value out of that, but on a personal bias, and I know you're not supposed to do it in fantasy, I tend to shy away from Seahawks receivers just because under Russell Wilson, you never knew who was going to get it, if anyone, because he liked to keep the ball for himself. And so the production value was hit and miss until the point where I was like, I'm just going to stay away from it if I have another option. But you know, I don't have a problem now giving a shot to you know, DJ Metcalf or Kenneth Walker, and I'm not going to bother trying to butcher the name, but Jackson Smith. You know, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think this is probably a year where I start to explore them a little bit more than I used to.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Honestly, I learned a lot about the NFL through playing fantasy football. And whether that be like just recognizing names and being like, oh, I've seen that person, or someone I played had that person, or whatever, just learning. And I think I have had Tyler Lockett on a team before, but he didn't really do too for me. So that, like, I recognize the name, but then obviously recognize the and Kenneth Walker. I want to be honest with you, I didn't even. I'm exposing myself to that with Jackson Smith. I've never seen that name in my life, and I probably should. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I kind of stay away from Seattle business because I didn't have a good relationship. Again, I have had Russell Wilson multiple years, sadly, as really like a backup quarterback. But I've had to use him in other times and whatnot. And he isn't, in my opinion, like you said, reliable. And then now, what is it, Geno Smith, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't been too impressed, so I just I don't have a lot of opinions on Seattle.
Yeah, I was impressed with Geno. Like I didn't buy into him early, and you know that was probably a mistake on my part last season, which is why I lost all my leagues. Yeah, but you know Geno's not bad. I think he's got enough production value where some of those receivers are going to get their value. I just don't know which one it's going to be if it's consistent. But I'm willing to give them a try this year, which is more than I would say last year. So that's a good note.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago he came out and surprised everybody. I think last year was kind of more of like where I expect everything to be. Like that's Geno's floor. He's not going to be this super over efficient quarterback he was in 22. He'll be more of that, 23 style where he'll get the job done. He'll be streamable in certain aspects, but at least the assets around him are going to be fantasy serviceable and some elite like DK Metcalf. But yeah, if you guys are ready to move on, we could talk about the Tyler Lockett conundrum we're going to have this year, if you're about it. Last year, 2022, he finishes the wide receiver 13, and then comes in, follows 2022 up with 23, and finishes as wide receiver 33. I drafted him everywhere thinking we were going to get a steal because of how late he was going, but it just wasn't the case. And it wasn't like it was sucked up by Njigba either. He still got his targets. He had 122 targets last year and only was able to come down with 79. Last year he had 84 with 117 targets, which that efficiency is 72% catch rate versus 65, which that is ugly and not really his character either. He finished with under 1,000 yards and only managed to get 5 touchdowns when the previous season he had 9. I think we're starting to see a downward turn. ADP kind of reflects it too. So like ultimately, I think the community and all of us should kind of be out on him. Yeah. I think that if anything, like a deeper league, like 12, where you have deep benches, or you play with like multiple flexes and you do the smart thing and get rid of your defensive kicker, you can kind of find a way to fit him in your roster and him actually be a serviceable stream week, like on certain weeks. But he's not a guy I foresee anybody really carrying the whole season because of the frustration that's going to come with owning him.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Like I said, it comes down to your bye week, and is he going to fit into a slot, and you can justify for 1 week kind of making the case for it, and hopefully you get a 50-50 chance you're right. And other than that, I just don't see it. When you're talking 60-70% averages, they say volume is king, but it's also volume when you catch it. So that's not good numbers to run by, or catch by. And that's not going to cut it in most leagues. Now in the 16-team league, maybe that's a little different. That does change things a little bit, just because the pool is limited. But I still don't think he would not be top of my radar in any mean.
Yeah, and I think it's the general consensus with that, man. It's just going to be, he's going to be who he is, and he's going to have his bright spots. But yeah. Do you want to try and pronounce this guy's name, or should I just butcher it again?
Yeah, just butcher it. I looked at it like I was going to try it. Just go ahead for it.
All right, it's Jackson Smith Njigba.
Njigba. Okay.
Yeah.
Njigba. Okay.
Yes.
I can do it now.
Yeah, sort of. He was a great receiver in his collegiate career when he played for Ohio State. His sophomore year, he had 95 receptions with 1,606 yards, along with 9 touchdowns. The dude was an absolute animal in college. I remember watching him. I'm a Penn State fan, where, unfortunately we like to lose to Ohio State every year. And so I had to experience the Njigba experience, and it was not fun. Watching him in college, in the pros, I think it was kind of more of a big learning year. He had to make adjustments. He wasn't as good of a route runner as we all thought he would be coming into the bit. I'm saying big, so I'm getting baseball mixed in now, but into the NFL. But I think that this year we might see a little bit more of a step forward. He's almost free 99. He's ADP of, let me see here, of a essentially pick 100, which is not bad. He'll be like your, little, like your end of your 9th, beginning of your 10th kind of pick, and I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
I could throw him as like my first bench or second bench player. It's a lottery ticket at that point. If he blows up, cool. If he doesn't, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, he probably wasn't in your starting lineup anyway, or starting lineup. There goes baseball again. Your roster anyway. So. I actually want to pause here for a second, because I found out something in the interview that we just did with Lauren here, and it's no secret. Matt, your interview just aired this morning or this afternoon, and you're obviously a fantasy baseball guy, which translated into fantasy football, but baseball, right? And so I'm talking to Lauren in the interview, and finds out that she's more of a baseball fan than a football fan too. So I'd just like to point out that both of my hosts over here are baseball people talking about football, and I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. So we'll have to see how you guys actually play this year before we make any long-term decisions, I think. But no, I joke. But I thought it was an interesting point. It was like, so baseball and baseball. It's perfect. Great. Good job.
By the way, he just emailed me my pink papers, so I'm out. I'm joking.
To be fair, I sent it via tweet. Or X tweet, X Twix. I don't know, man. It's confusing.
Thank you, Elon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Also came up in Lauren's interview.
Oh no, I can't wait to watch this. Oh.
All right, so I think we can all agree that this is probably one of those not necessarily got to draft it, but if I have to make a pick, there's a reason to pick him. It's kind of just one of those toss a dart kind of things. So I think we're good to move on. Lauren, what other teams do we got to pick from? And go ahead and pick the next one.
Well, we have the Rams and the Cardinals left. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Why not? They excite me a little more than the Rams do, even though Matthew Stafford is on the Rams, and I should have some kind of allegiance to that, but I don't. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a little tidbit for Matt. I'm a UGA grad, so any player that we talk about that went to UGA, I will be happy with a smile on my face talking about it.
Got it. Okay, that's like me with Penn State, so we're even. So when we start talking about Saquon Barkley,
Yeah, you'll never hear me say anything about Illinois football. So that's Illinois apostrophe S. I am from Chicago. It's not pronounced Illinois. I was apostrophe S-ing that for the people at home that we're going to judge. We do it. Being from Chicago, I do it too. So I'm making that clear. Don't put it in the comments. I apostrophe S. I know what I'm saying. Sorry. That's just a big Chicago thing, so go ahead.
I hear you. Trust me. I could turn on the New York accent. We could really go to town. But
now you got to turn on the New York accent and say that guy's name from Seattle again. Just kidding.
Oh man, you're really giving me a run for my money. But let's talk some exciting stuff. I like this team a lot, the Arizona Cardinals, and I truly want to talk about their rookie, Marvin Harrison Jr., the son of the great Marvin Harrison, who had a phenomenal Hall of Fame career. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is going to follow suit. Played for Ohio State, freshman, sophomore, and rookie year. His junior year. His junior year, he played about 12 games, 67 receptions, 1,211 yards, averaged about 18.1 yards per reception, 14 touchdowns. The dude is an absolute machine. He is 6'3", 202 pounds. He gets up, gets the ball, gets big, gets bodied, and honestly, I'm all about this kid. A lot of people are talking about drafting him as a top 12 wide receiver, and that is where I think the love has gone too far. I'm okay with having him as my wide receiver too, but it seems like I'm not going to get him at all. Do you guys feel the same?
Well, I definitely feel the same in that his father is legendary in the sport, and so I feel like the genetics there are going to carry him a long ways. I don't know if I would draft him wide receiver 1, but he would definitely be something. It's all about recognition, right? So name recognition alone, and having played for a long time, I think I'm just going to pick him up just in case, if I can help it. But I guess it always depends on what's still on the table. And infamously, especially in the 16-team league, where is your draft position? Because if you're getting, if you're getting 16, that's not bad because you get the back-to-back. But if you're drafting 7, 8 in a 16 league, there's going to be some really tough decisions to make. So I don't see as much of a problem picking up Harrison as much as I would have with some of the other receivers we talked about today. So yeah, it's an interesting point. But I think he's pickup worthy.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's something else kind of like freaks me out about drafting people that I haven't seen a lot of like NFL experience with. And I know that's the whole point, also like take a chance on people and whatnot. But like I don't want to be the person that takes the chance and then it like I don't know, like tears his ACL or something. Or I hope not. Literally knock on wood for all things, no injury possible. But I don't know. I feel like someone definitely will obviously take him as their first. It won't be me, but all praise to that person that does it, and hopefully he does good for you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at it too. Wide receivers take a little bit more time to develop. It's not like a running back with the guaranteed, production. And usually a running back taken in the first round, or even early second round, usually have, bona fide top 12 finish, right? Whereas wide receivers, you don't really see that. They usually turn on halfway through the season. Look at Jamar Chase, who was another guy we looked at in the same way that then took, I would say, until about week 8 to really turn it on and be that Jamar Chase that we know now. So it could take some time for Harrison to adjust to the NFL, and for him and Murray to really develop some chemistry. So I'm being very conservative, I guess, when it comes to drafting him. Again, I take him as my 2 all day, but as a 1, I'm kind of going to stay out of it. I'm probably against the most of the industry in this aspect.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I take him as 1 just because I tend to side with Lauren on I go for the consistency and kind of proven value. Not that he doesn't have proven value from college. I just what does he do in the NFL? And I would probably, if I had to pick between him and someone who's been in the league a little bit longer, especially on the same team for a little bit longer, knows the routes, knows the playbook, knows the coach, and they have that dynamic built, I would probably go with someone else. But who's to say? Like we just said about that one person in the draft that kind of just goes rogue and picks someone out randomly. That might be that kind of pick where they pick him up kind of against the current and sends the rest of the draft into shockwaves. And I could see that happening just as likely. So.
Yeah, but I think we're kind of butchered him to death at this point. Over the head. Let's talk about Kyler Murray, the guy that's going to be thrown on the ball. The guy that I'm actually excited to draft. Obviously, the year before he got hurt and wasn't able to finish the season, but came back this year and didn't look so bad and didn't look so great either. But I think that, having 2 years removed from that injury, I think is going to be something that's going to be good for both the Cardinals and Kyler Murray. I love him. He passes the ball pretty efficiently. He obviously has another big body target, even though, we saw DeAndre Hopkins lead the team. Now you add Marvin Harrison, and, we see him be successful with Hopkins. Why can't he be with Harrison on the same foot as I'm saying, and don't draft him as your wide receiver 1. But, this is why I'm also saying draft Kyler Murray. If you wait on quarterbacks and you're like, okay, cool, I missed out on these guys. Somebody decided to take 2 quarterbacks early, which bozo move, don't do that. I'm okay with walking away with him as my quarterback 1 and being like, bet, because you know what, he runs the ball, which is an automatic cheat code, something I always look in a quarterback, right? That's usually what sets him aside between finishing as a top 6 quarterback versus a top 12. That's how you break in the rushing production. If he's going to be able to run for anywhere from 86 yards to 100 yards in a single game, along with passing for 250 to 300 yards, having a passing touchdown and possibly even a rushing touchdown, there you go. You've won. You have already beaten the opponent with your outscored their quarterback, who is just a pocket passer or somebody that just doesn't run as much. So Kyler Murray, for me, I feel we're all forgetting what he did in 2021, where he was a top 5 quarterback and was absolutely electric. And I think he returns to that this year as long as he can manage to stay on the field.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you said, I was all in on Kyler Murray, and I had held on to him last year, and relatively paid off. So I think he gets back to his status and back to normal. And just as much as any receiver learning the playbook, it's just as much about the dynamic between him and the quarterback. Because if you and the quarterback aren't on the same page, you're not getting the ball. So I think that happens. I think Kyler Murray goes back to his top tier status. What about you, Lauren? Are you in on Kyler Murray, or are you still kind of a wait and see just because of last year?
No, I like it. Honestly, I think his first season he put up good numbers. I don't have the exact stats right in front of me, but I know they were good. Pause. And sorry. Hold on.
All good. Look, that's our sponsor in the show. That's Sparky the dog. But we'll keep going while Lauren has that, and we can actually just there. Nope, wrong button. There we go. Still learning the buttons. Pushing more buttons, and we'll bring Lauren back in when she's ready. But I think we're all in on Kyler Murray, so I think that's a pretty solid bet there. But it really just depends. If you have the first pick at quarterbacks, do you think you pick him first, or do you pick someone else?
So I mean, he's kind of like, again, he's outside of like my top 12 in terms of quarterbacks. So like he's not my first option. If anything, he'll be like my sneaky waivers don't open until after the weekend where all the games have played for that first week. Maybe I'll sneak him and see what his first weekend looks like. Maybe then he could hold down another roster spot for another week, or maybe my quarterback goes down and then I have to start him. And then by that degree, I already have him on my bench. So I don't mind scooping up a second one in the draft at kind of like the end, because honestly too, I'm also a guy that will kind of pass on either a DST or a kicker and kind of pick them up off waivers going into the week or weekend, and just pick up that extra player and then decide who to drop right before game time. So, it's all a matter of how your league kind of manipulates it and what you're allowed to do. And then, obviously don't do that if your waivers don't open until after the games have played. But, there's all different kinds of draft strategies to kind of, build depth and then kind of figure it out later, because DSTs you could stream, kickers you could stream, but trying to get a lottery ticket on a guy that could have a bounce back season that everybody's kind of either overlooking or more of like having still the burn marks from being burned these last couple of years with him. So it's one of those things where you could take advantage to be ahead of the crowd and already have him on your team while everybody's trying to scrounge and say, oh man, he's already owned, type deal.
Yeah, any quarterbacks you would take him over just by name recognition alone. So not necessarily looking at stats, but if we could play the one or the other game, the AB game. So Justin Fields, you taking Kyler Murray? Or you taking Justin Fields?
Murray all day.
Okay, same here. Let's see. Geno Smith.
Murray.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I don't have the rankings. We'll get a little bit better at the AB game, but anybody that you could think of that like it's a toss up between the two kind of thing.
So like my chalk up would be like, okay, like the biggest and hardest decision will probably be between him and Jared Goff. Like I like Goff a lot. I think Goff has a lot of upside. The weapons are there. Between I think Gibbs taking a step forward and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown, and if Williams could ever just stop gambling and actually play like he did in college, they would be a really dangerous team. But, I think him and Goff are like a fair cutoff mark. Other platforms have him higher because of the rushing capabilities, but at the same time, you still need him to do it, right? So, like, for me, I'm going to have him outside of my top 12, and maybe that's where I kind of go, I can't get him. But I've seen a lot of mock drafts I've done, and I'm like, he's still there. He's still there sitting around with, like, Aaron Rodgers and Goff and things like that where, okay, cool. Give me Kyler. I'm gonna pick him over those guys probably.
Okay. Do you happen to know what his ADP is?
So I'm looking at ADP now, and I'm probably not getting him at all if I'm gonna wait around that long. He is going off the board at half point per reception at 7, and I think that price is way too high.
Yeah.
Like again, like I talked about Brock Purdy, top 12 quarterback, the consistency with him. I still like Dak over him, honestly, which I see Dak going over him. This is Sleeper's ADP, not Fantasy Pros, which kind of covers everybody, but there hasn't been enough drafts for us to get those statistics yet. So I don't buy in until about a month before the season. So about August, I'll start really considering them. But right now, this is Sleeper, where there's been actually a bunch of drafts because a lot of people will use that platform because it's easier. But yeah, you look at it and there's just kind of some crazy things going on. Even Justin Herbert being completely buried at 16, quarterback 16 in ADP. It's just one of those things where, I could see the path too, but Kyler Murray, I feel that's still a little rich for my blood. Let's maybe move him down, and maybe I need to come up and have him at like 11.
Okay. So I think reasonably though, what we can agree on is in a 16-team league, he's at least top 16 in that if you have an option in the first round and he's on the table, he's at least in the consideration. I don't know if I'd buy him at 7, but if someone goes rogue in the draft and I have to start picking quarterbacks all of a sudden, I don't know if I wouldn't pick him. But I think 7's a little high. Yeah, that's interesting that Herbert was that low. So I'm curious. But while we're back on this subject, I wanted to bring back into the room. We have our lovely Lauren.
So Lauren, I think you have a little bit of an explanation here. So, what is the dog's name?
Oh, okay. Her name is Tybee.
Okay.
My parents came home from dinner, so she had to greet them at the door with all of her might. All
Fair enough.
6 pounds of her. She's a corgi mixed with a Jack Russell. She probably shouldn't be 26 pounds, but
Okay. Corgis are adorable. My mom has a purebred Jack Russell, so I don't know if I agree on the Russell part, but Corgis are cute, so acceptable. And she's unofficially our new mascot, so we'll call it that. But
tell her that. She'll be excited.
all right, so let's go ahead and transition into the last team in the NFC South. I know we're running a little bit long, but we're
we're having fun, and it's getting our feet wet in this experience. So I'm glad you guys are all sharing it with us. But let's go ahead and cover my not so favorite LA Rams in that. And I say not my favorite because the Raiders were supposed to go back to LA, and that deal was being brokered by Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and somehow the Raiders were. Yeah, it's my show. It's shafted by the Rams, and the Rams snuck in there out of St. Louis and took my spot in LA. So not that I'm against them being in Vegas because that stadium is beautiful, but we can shift over to our lovely Rams there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good names on this. We had a wide receiver last year come out and set records, and then we had a running back come out of nowhere that absolutely was amazing. And both of these players finished as number 4 and number 6 at their position, and they were both waiver wire pickups this year. Nobody drafted them, and I kind of want to talk about the rookie sensation Puka Nacua, the wide receiver who finished at number 4. Number 4 wide receiver. Thank you. But dude put up 246 fantasy points, averaged about 14.5 per game, which was fantastic, and he was incredible when he did play. He had 159 targets last year, which is absolutely amazing. That is elite amount of targets, which tells you, hey, Matthew Stafford trusts him, which we clearly saw. He was able to come down with it and own up and take advantage of this opportunity, which he totally did. No rookie last year got that many targets. And I think the production is going to be similar, maybe come down more to earth about like 130 targets, which will still make up for a great season. He'll still have maybe not 100, but maybe like mid to low 90s receptions instead of the 105 he had last year. The 66% of catch rate, which is still wonderful. I think that might even come up, hopefully, because with Cooper Kupp now being on the field more often. He'll be able to draw off a little bit of that, double coverage or number 1 coverage from here and there in the sets. He still had 1,486 yards last year and had a wonderful 6 touchdowns. Now, that I would like to see a little bit more. Now, I think that with that, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford in the red zone essentially have that kind of connection. And as long as Cooper Kupp's going to be on the field, I feel that's where Puka Nacua is going to kind of miss out on that high-end touchdown scoring. But, I mean, you look at guys like, Julio Jones and, other wide receivers like that never really put up the extraordinary touchdown numbers, but still were like elite number 1 wide receivers. That's going to be Puka Nacua. And just, you're going to pretty much draft Cooper Kupp to be that touchdown machine and 1A, 1A kind of type deal.
Okay. Lauren, for you, do you see Matthew Stafford in your Georgia biasness there? Do you see him being a top-tier quarterback this year, or do you think he kind of slides in the middle of the pack, or where do you stand?
See, the beauty of this is that I wasn't a Georgia fan when Matthew Stafford played at UGA, so I have no allegiance really to Matthew Stafford. I have an allegiance to UGA 2.0 up in Philadelphia. But like based on, he did recently win a Super Bowl, but I think that may be his peak there. I hate to say that because, go Dogs, but I think that was his peak, and I think that he's done what he intended to do in the NFL, and he's good. And even better, Stetson Bennett is there with him, so.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know about his playing time, and obviously he's not going to be first string this year in any means, but yeah.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of stock in Matthew Stafford over the years, back in Detroit and a little bit in LA. And he's been a decent production-wise. He's been putting up great numbers. He had some top years, even though the scoreboard didn't always say it in Detroit. He had good numbers. But I think, you might be right in that he's coming towards the end of his time, and you have some of the younger quarterbacks in the new style of play with your Lamar Jacksons, your Burrows, your Mahomes, and that he might be, towards the end of it, but I think he's still pretty countable on solid production, though, especially when you have those built-in relationships with Cooper Kupp. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I mean, he threw the ball, 521 times last year, completed about 63% of his throws, and managed to put up almost 4,000 yards. I think that's repeatable. Truthfully, I think they're going to throw the ball as much as humanly possibly can. That's what, gosh, I'm having a really bad day with the words here and remembering. But Sean McVay offense, throw the ball, fast pace, going to have a little extra production that way. Plus, I think they're going to throw the Kyron Williams a lot more. I think he's going to have almost that CMC kind of role, so that's going to open up a little bit more those design runs and design throws. I think the touchdown percentage is going to go up and the total touchdowns are going to go up just based off the fact that you're going to have Cooper Kupp in more games. Because Cooper Kupp only played about 12 games last year. If you can play a full season or even get to 15, we're going to see at least 30 touchdowns from him. And a second year of Puka Nacua, maybe there's going to be a little bit more there. I like the team. I don't know how much I'm going to draft Stafford. He might be a streamable option here and there, somebody we recommend throughout the season that says, hey, he has a good matchup, you can roll him out there and kind of just be in and out of your lineup all year. He's never going to be like a top 12, quarterback on a consistent basis, I think, ever again at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think he's a solid stream option just because he's got a solid team around him, and you can at least count on him for a decent points for the 1 week that you need him. So it's a good point. All right. Let's see. Who do we got? Kyron Williams. How do we think he's going to do this year? Do we think he's got fantasy relevance?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I'm a huge fan. He won me leagues last year. It was wonderful. I actually scooped up him and Puka week 1 and then went on to win a championship. So, yeah, buddy. And I think Kyron Williams is going to take a step forward this year. I think, like I said earlier, I think that he might have that Christian McCaffrey role where he's going to get, 40, 50, 60 targets. He's going to come down with the receptions. He's going to get reception touchdowns, be in the game as much as possible. Now, I understand, too, that they went out, and this is like the big doubter. They spent a day 2 pick, a round 3 pick on Blake Corum, and they're talking about him kind of subsiding his workload. But at the same time, like you got to think about it this way. They still say that, Williams is the guy, right? He's just there to kind of spell him so that they can kind of keep Williams healthy, because he did go down for, a couple games as well. He played, 12 games last year. Maybe if we can get him for 15 over this whole season, if Blake Corum is keeping him on the field and taking off that kind of like extra workload so the guy can get a breather instead of, going over and hit the gas mask after every, down, this is where you're going to kind of, it's a fair trade-off. So I think Williams is going to be fine. My bold prediction, which is going to be for the year, is he finishes as the running back number 2 this year on the season.
Okay. So, and you would almost expect that, right? Because if you're saying he's going to be in a Christian McCaffrey role, they're going to use him. He's going to get the volume, and inevitably will get the points. And I agree that even Christian McCaffrey in Carolina had Anderson was the backup. And probably messing that up, but he had 1 or 2 running backs that he'd swap in and out with, on 3rd, 4th down kind of thing. He's going to need a break, and someone's got to fill that role. So I think that might be right. I don't know if he'd settle in on number 2 for running back overall, but I definitely think top 5. So I think that's a pretty solid prediction there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we got Cooper Kupp left, and then Cooper Kupp. We've kind of talked about him in and out of this kind of segment with just like how he could affect everybody else. I strongly think he's going to be a nice bounce back candidate this year. If you look at where his ADP is, again off sleeper right now, Kupp is going wide receiver 23, which I think is an absolute steal. Yeah. I'm totally okay with having him and DK Metcalf as my 1-2 punch if I went running back because there's a lot of times you can smash Williams in the 2nd round, and yes, it's almost a no-no when it comes to having a wide receiver and running back in the same team on your team. But at the same time, I'm not opposed to it when it comes to 2 elite talents like that. So, like, the production is pretty much guaranteed. They don't cross-contaminate, right? Like, it's not like drafting Puka and Kupp. It's still, like, Williams still has his guaranteed production and attempts, and still, he's not going to go and take from Kupp's mouth either. So Kupp is going to be just fine, and having the 2 on the same team, I'm all about it. So I like Kupp this year. I just pray that he plays more than 12 games.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I've always liked Kupp. I've gotten burned by him a couple times, so I kind of have a reason to not pick him up. But I think he's got solid production value and a worthy pickup for sure. I wouldn't see a reason not to. What about you, Lauren? You got any stock in Cooper Kupp this year?
Oh, are you asking me? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Do you have any stock in Cooper Cup, or are you just kind of avoiding him this year?
I actually have never had the pleasure of having him on any fantasy team, but he's been played against me and done amazing, but I've also heard people complain about him. So I think it's here or there. I think he's obviously a great player, but he has hiccups or he'll get hurt, and then you're just kind of like, well, now what? But you had the Puka chat when Ty D was barking. I love Puka. I was able to pick Puka up obviously last season, and I was playing in a league like a lot with some of my girlfriends, and none of them knew what in the hell was going on with fantasy football. So I was like the little like double in the corner, like I know everything. But picked him up, and then I was smooth sailing the entire basically season because of that. And then I forget his name, but he's on the Dolphins. That also did really, really good last year.
Waddle?
I don't think it was Waddle. It was another player. But yeah, something like that. But I like smooth sailing after having Puka and then his little hiccup. But I would honestly, do you think Puka would go first round this year?
That's right now where his ADP is. He's either going at, here, let me pull it up for you. I'll tell you right now. So Puka is going at pick 7 overall in ADP. So, you know, you kind of got to just say, okay, cool. You know, this is where we're at. You know, I'm not mad at it. The production's there and the receptions are there. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, seems justified for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those players that I'm excited to watch this season play, just in general. Hopefully no injuries. I knock on wood every time I say that because I'm like, God, the worst thing.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps it up for the NFC South. Yeah. All right. So I'll transition us over to what we're calling the commission's corner, and I'll be quick about it because I know we're a little bit long, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But just a quick status update on the league. So we currently have 49 teams fully registered out of 64, and we are over the 64 mark when it comes to teams we're in conversations with. And we have some announcements coming. We have a huge announcement coming tomorrow. Just a sneak peek at someone who has gone viral in the last 2 weeks. It's not the Hawk Tua lady. I don't know why that keeps coming up. It's not her. She didn't answer us. So it is someone who has made the rounds on social media, and I can't wait to introduce you guys to them. They were a shot in the dark. Someone passed the information to me. I was like, I'll take a shot because I saw they had a Niners jersey in the background. I was like, they clearly like football, and I got on the conversation with them, and they had a Raider shirt on, so I knew I was in. And he's super pumped. Well, they're super pumped to join the league, and I think you guys are gonna like to meet them. And he was a really cool guy, and an awesome story there. So. That'll be announced tomorrow morning, I think it's scheduled for. But okay, so I have one more live read before we wrap it up and a couple more notes. So I want to take a second and apologize because if you were watching last week, I did tell you to subscribe at fantasyturf4.com in the homepage there. Scroll down, type your email in, get the check mark because we were supposed to start a contest yesterday. And if you have checked your email, you have noticed there is no contest in your email. So I'm still working on it. So in the meantime, stay notified, sign up for the email list, and we're going to get that contest rolling. But it is a little bit delayed, so I do apologize for that. But with that, I want to jump into our last live read for today, which is brought to you by Momentum. And so I'm going to transition here. Nice little decal. So, are you ready to turn your ideas into income and passion? Are you ready to turn your ideas into income and passion and profit? Momentum Weekend Workshop is a 3-day event in Walt Disney World, Friday through Sunday, September 27 to 29, 2024. That's this year, guys. For creators and solopreneurs, designed to inspire and equip you with the tools and strategies needed to turn your passion into profitable ventures. It offers a dynamic mix of presentations, workshops, and networking, a lot of networking, all aimed at empowering you to build and grow your business. With a focus of practical advice, tactical advice, actionable insights, and community support, Momentum is the ideal event if you're looking to launch or elevate your entrepreneurial journey. Head on over to lumangello.com/momentum and start your journey today. So I wanted to take a quick second here, and I'm going to leave this up so that in case I start tearing up, no one gets to see that on live. So I want to take a second and really highlight this opportunity. Several people in the league this year have attended this weekend's workshop. Again, in September. And we've attended multiple times. I personally attended multiple times, and I'll be attending again this year. And I wanted to just take a minute and highlight this is actually the workshop where Fantasy Turf War was kind of born from, and that we workshopped the idea and we grew it from here. And I cannot recommend highly enough that if you're serious about your career in terms of a solopreneur or a content creator or an entrepreneur or even established businesses, if you're serious about it and you want to advance and network with people, again, multiple people in this league I've met through this workshop, then you have to attend this event. So what I wanted to also clarify too that not clarify. I don't know. I'm trying to cry. Lou Mangello, the guy who hosts this, is a dear friend of mine and has become a mentor over the last decade or so. And it's because of him and this workshop that this show is even happening by me taking that leap and making this into reality. So. Again, check him out, lumangello.com/momentum, and I'll see you guys in September. We'll be there, I promise. And I just got this right before the show, so I don't have a decal for it. He wanted to extend that there is a discount. So if you go to lumangello.com/momentum, and in the promo code, type in the word fantasy, just like it sounds, you will get $100 off in signing up. And that is effective only through the next week. And so take advantage of that. It's an absolute steal of value. It's in Walt Disney World, in downtown Disney or Disney Springs. It's an awesome time. I've made lasting relationships out of this, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. He's an awesome guy, and he does great things. So I want to make sure that he got highlighted, and go and check him out. Again, if you're anything content creation, entrepreneur, any business at all, check him out. So I wanted to make sure we dropped that before we call it today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Lauren and start wrapping up.
Well. That will be the end of this week's episode. Very exciting. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you follow along on all of our social media. We have Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, obviously YouTube. Am I missing one? I don't think so.
Yeah, Fantasy Turf War on all the socials. So there you go.
Yes. And sign up on the website because we want everyone to have the opportunity to win. Doesn't mean you're going to, but we'd love to give you the opportunity. So Cory, Matt, where can people find you, or do you want to shout anything out? Or
Matt, go ahead.
Okay. You can find me at Matt-Ahne is how you spell my terrible last name, on X, Twitter, or whatever we call it. Find me at Locked On Fantasy Baseball if you want a little bit something different from football and scratch that daily itch. And you'll find me here as well, moving forward. So I'm looking forward to fantasy football with you guys moving forward. Thank you for having me.
and you can find me on all the socials. I don't really have all my stuff pulled up, but it's Cory Bassett on everything. I think it's Cory Bassett NC on Twitter, Twix, X, whatever it is. If you like what you saw with Matt, his interview dropped this morning, this afternoon. Go check it out. It's a great interview. We talk about lots of things, and I just wanted to say I did look up that reference you made at the end of that interview, and I do know who that is now. So I get it. Thanks. Totally set me up with the big question mark, so I get it. That's an inside joke. You got to go watch the interview to watch me look like an idiot for about a minute and a half. So, but no, it's a great conversation. Again, it was an instant character. We knew you were the right fit for the show, and we're glad to have you. And we'll look forward to having you every Tuesday. And so Lauren, what about you? Where can people find you at?
I'm on social media. I have Instagram. Lauren.elizabeth.hill. I have a Twitter /X account, whichever way you want to call that. It's just lhill716. And then if you really want to get businessy and technical with it, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Why not? It's just my name, so Lauren Hill. And yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Be excellent to each other, be kind, and we will see you on the fields.
We're working on the outro. I said see you in the draft. I wrote see you on the field. We're going to get better at it. So, okay, that one didn't work. So now we got to find a new one. So, see you at the Taylor Swift concert or something. I don't know. No. Okay, not that.
Definitely not that. No.
All right. Well, we'll see you next Tuesday at Fantasy Turf 4 Live. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Look, we're getting there. This is our third or fourth live show. I don't even remember now. We're getting there. Look, we got some growing pains to do, but look, we've got the nice camera set up. We've got the audio. I did mess up the stream deck by putting up some person's name that doesn't. It's not in the interview, so that's awesome. But we'll get there. Look, it's all fun, and look, this is the authenticity that we wanted to get from fantasy football. And you're not going to find it on other networks. You're not going to find it anywhere else. This is what we wanted to do. And look, it's raw. It's us. We're learning. We're all growing together, and we're glad that you guys can be there with us. So we'll be dropping interviews all week. We're going to take a break for the holiday, but we'll be back on Tuesday with a live show, and then we're going to pick up with the interviews every day about 2:00-ish Eastern, and then you'll be able to find us there. So until then, we'll see you guys all next week. And yes, be excellent to each other. That's a movie reference, Lauren. You gotta know what movie that is. Well, we established she doesn't know what Tommy Boy is. So
All right.
So your homework, Lauren, is to go figure out what movie Be Excellent to Each Other is from. And you can Google it. It's fine.
I was going to Google it for you.
If you don't know that's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Lauren's got her homework. I'm going to go watch it again. All three of them? Yeah, there's three of them. So I'm going to go watch it. And we'll see you guys all next week. All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.